Hello, in this video I'm going to be debunking the theory that the Richat Structure, or the Eye of the Sahara in Africa, is Atlantis. And this is going to be the first part in a three-part series of presentations. And so this is what Atlantis is supposed to look like as described by Plato. Um, it's composed of successive concentric rings of water and land that are surrounding this kind of central island in the middle. And so we have the widths of each of those individual rings of water and land are actually specified to a precise measurement. And the measurements are given in stadia, which is like a Greek unit that's equivalent to 8.8 stadia per mile. And so this is kind of like a schematic or diagram that I made to show exactly what the widths of those rings are. Specifically, the distance from the center of the entire city to each of the rings of water and land. And as I'll mention in a future video, the actual dimensions of the individual rings in the Richat structure do not match the dimensions as provided by Plato, but that's for another video. But in a big picture sense, in a broader sense, it looks like the Richat structure, which looks like this, does really resemble that ring-like structure as as mentioned by Plato in a sense. And this is a view from the top down. This is another view from an inclined angle. And so it seems like a reasonable conclusion to say that this is Atlantis after all. There aren't that many other structures of this size that actually match Plato's description to this degree. The individual distances, the measurements of each of the rings might be a little bit off, but hey, looking at it from a broader sense, there is somewhat of a match here. But there's a major problem with that idea. This is a map that's showing you the distance from Las Vegas. It's a place that almost everybody listening to this should be familiar with. But especially if you're living in California, or you live on the West Coast, it's universally known that driving to Las Vegas, it takes a very long time. It's like a 4 to 5 hour drive. And it's a very long distance, and the actual distance from the sea to Las Vegas is around 230 miles. And that's a really long distance. So how far away is the Richat structure from the Atlantic Ocean? It turns out that the Richat structure, or the Eye of the Sahara, which is over here, is actually farther away from the Atlantic Ocean than Las Vegas is away from the Pacific Ocean. And so it's around 310 miles away. And as you can see here, the distance from Las Vegas to the Pacific coast is greater than the entire width of the state of California. And California is not a small state, it's a very large state. And so the Eye of the Sahara is actually really, really far away from the Atlantic Ocean. There's only one problem with this. It's specifically stated in Plato's dialogues that a canal was bored from the sea all the way to the outermost ring of water of the city. And the length of the canal was described as 50 stadia in length. And so this is a diagram that shows you exactly how that how that shows you kind of like what it means by boring a canal from the sea right here all the way to the outermost ring of land, outermost ring of water. And as you can see, 50 stadia is around 5.7 miles. The total width of this city is around 3.5 miles. So the length of this canal is actually an understatement in a sense. It should be a little bit longer. But 5.7 miles is not that long, right? It's a reasonable distance, but it's not very long. But the problem of the Eye of the Sahara is the canal that would have been bored would have to be 300 or more miles long. And we know that when Atlantis existed, which was thousands of years ago, the sea level was actually lower. So the canal would have probably had to be all the way out here, or like 350 miles. And so 350 miles versus 5.7 miles, that's like a factor of 50 difference. And so the idea that the Richat structure or the Eye of the Sahara could be Atlantis is just contradictory to the entire um, narrative of Plato, and it's not off by just a few percent, or maybe 10 or 20%, or even 100 or 200%. It's off by a factor of 50. And so this is one of the reasons why the Richat structure or the Eye of the Sahara, despite its superficial resemblance to Plato's Atlantis, can't be Atlantis.